as Jaran said, I was working in the department which was dealing with basically conservation issues at a planning level. So we were very much dealing with conservation areas and looking for the designation of the conservation areas, lots of evaluation with it. Well, from there I kind of developed the interest into industrial areas in particular. And that's where first I did a kind of master thesis in methodology of evaluation of industrial buildings. And later from there, went to the reuse. And my whole PhD was was dealing with the problems of how to connect the evaluation results with the reuse. So how the evaluation results of industrial areas can be used for design guidelines when we are dealing with the conversion of industrial areas or industrial buildings. And for today, instead of dealing with the whole PhD, because I think that would be a bit impossible and maybe a bit boring also for you, I kind of chose only the example on which I was trying to partly test, partly examine how these guidelines, which in conservation terms are usually defined in art historical terms, can be redefined in more architectural terms, so that basically architectural approach would be complemented with the art historical approach. Industrial buildings, just to give you a little bit of a background, industrial buildings were protected mainly, or industrial areas for that matter, mainly because of their pure historic interest rather than architectural interest. And I found through the research that that kind of evaluation is then very hard to use for architects. It's basically not operational for architects for pure architectural purposes. So that's why I was then looking into architectural approaches, and for that reason I chose, in order to see how the architects would approach something and see whether I can use that then to redesign, let's say, the guidelines for conversions in conservation terms. I used the approaches of architects of today on one example, and that was the conversion of Bankside power station into Tate Modern. And the reason why I chose this building was because it was not protected, so it gave me the possibility to look into the way the architects deal with things without being instructed by conservationists, and then also to take their approaches back to conservationists and compare it and see whether we can come up with something that from the architectural side could be useful for conservationists as well. Bankside power station was designed in the mid 20th century by Gilbert Scott. And according to art historians, that is considered his masterpiece. Another building by him was Battersea Power Station, that probably most of you know as well. At the time when Bankside was closed, and that was in 1980, the building was not listed, and it was standing basically empty and without use all until the mid-90s when Tate bought it and decided to put their modern collection into this building. The building was one of the most important elements into design of this building for Gilbert Scott was actually planning issues. He was he was designing, and these are some sketches, his original sketches of the way he was planning to design the building. He was basically planning it from we can say from the kind of environmental point of view, in terms of looking how the building fits in the area and what can contribute to the area, but very much he was taking care of the silhouette over the panels. So he was seeing it as a counterpart to the St. Paul's Cathedral, which stands exactly opposite to it. Gilbert Scott's idea about industrial building was that these buildings should not be seen just as kind of utilitarian buildings which are there to fulfill the purpose, as the people from from, well, 19th century in particular were looking into it, but he claimed, and basically he showed, particularly in this building, that these can be fine buildings as much as church buildings can be. And in that respect, he was very much then looking how the building actually works together with St. Paul. And as we see at the beginning, he had the idea of having 2 chimneys, but finally he opted for 1 chimney, which is then kind of much stronger counterpart as a kind of chimney bell tower to the St. Paul from the other side. And then next to these planning issues, important thing for him was then finally kind of creating the building, which from the outside looks as a very symmetrical building with this big, basically expressionist type of, we can say, type of architecture, very close with very defined volumes and very closed elevation, which, as far as the function is concerned, can very well function in that thing. But when we go into the building, then we see that there is none of this symmetry present in the building. The building is divided into 3 longitudinal naves, basically, of which one was used, this one was used as a turbine hall, and this one was a boiler house. And the third one is actually behind here, and that was simply a station for a checking point, basically, where all the offices and everything else was placed. And that part was working the latest. Only at the beginning of 2000s, this part was actually closed, and now it's in the process of refurbishment. Maybe it's even finished, I'm not sure. So basically inside we have a totally different spatial disposition that we have from the outside. So the way how I was analyzing the building and then later looking into what the architects were doing were the matters of materials, the matters of spatial organization, as I now explained, from the outside and from the inside. And then in that respect kind of trying to get the overall idea about the building and what then these architects were looking and what was important for them in these terms. In the 90s, so what happened in the 90s with the building? So the building was bought by Tate, and Tate decided to open a competition, architectural competition. Some 150 architects were participating to the competition. After 2 stages, 6 architects were shortlisted, and I was actually analyzing here only the 6 shortlisted rather than all 150. This building, to the surprise of English heritage very much, was not listed. And it was actually secluded from listing all until 1998. Whereas Battersea Power Station, which according to architectural historians is not so fine building as Bankside Power Station, was listed.